Okay, let's unpack this.
Welcome back to the deep dive. You've shared with us a stack of critical source materials detailing one of the most consequential political dramas currently unfolding in the Philippines. We're talking about the multi-billion-peso flood control scandal. And this isn't just a story about, misuse of funds. It's really a high-stakes investigation into accountability, political power, and, the very definition of justice itself.
That's right. Our mission today is to cut through all the noise and really analyze the timeline, the rhetoric, and the crucial legal mechanics of this entire saga. Specifically, we are tracking a very, very public promise made by the administration. The promise to jail high-level officials, what they famously termed the big fish.
The big fish, yeah.
And they gave themselves a deadline, Christmas. We're now examining the consequences because that clock has officially run out. And that phrase, big fish, you'll find it all over the sources. It became the absolute measure of the investigation's legitimacy. So when you hear the words flood control scandal, you really need to be thinking about political protection, massive infrastructure budgets, and this deep-seated kickback system. People weren't looking for arrests of, small-time clerks. They were looking for senators, for representatives, and the powerful architects, so-called godfathers, behind the whole operation.
And that's why we're dissecting this massive chasm that opened up. On one side, you have this high-profile political commitment, a firm symbolic deadline for arrests, and on the other, you have the complex, often excruciatingly slow reality of criminal proceedings, especially when you are targeting political and financial elites.
Right.
Our sources, which are fresh from late December 2025, they provide a fascinating conflict. You've got the severe coordinated criticism from opposition lawmakers, and that's contrasted directly with the defense strategy deployed by the palace immediately after the deadline passed.
It's a perfect case study, really. It shows how political expectations just clash head-on with legal due process. We need to define that big fish concept, trace the promise right back to its origin, and then see exactly how the opposition, weaponized the failure to meet that deadline. So, tracing the president's own words is absolutely crucial here because he was the one who personally set the measurement for success or failure for the entire government apparatus. He basically established the standard.
He did. He set the bar. And the initial concept, this idea of going after the big fish, it actually emerged back in September, months before the deadline was even set.
Okay, so this wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment thing.
Not at all. It started quite casually, actually. It was in a public forum or a podcast. The president acknowledged the systemic nature of the problem with flood control. He indicated that the government recognized the corruption wasn't just, random individual acts. It was an entrenched system.
And he used language that signaled the investigation was serious about the scale of it all.
Exactly. He noted that the government would have to have very strong evidence against the individuals truly operating this system. He used that precise terminology. I suppose the description that we sometimes use, the big fish, the ones truly operating the system.
And that one phrase just immediately elevated public expectation.
It did. The investigation suddenly wasn't just about accountability, it was about structural reform. It was about proving that the system architects, the people who wrote the rules and approved the budgets, that they were not, in fact, untouchable.
So that sets the foundation. But then the commitment escalated, and, you could argue maybe recklessly, on November 13th. That's when the Christmas deadline was introduced.
That's the critical turning point. He was asked directly about the fate of the 37 individuals who had been implicated in the initial kickback schemes. That number, the 37, came from the first batch of case referrals by the newly formed Independent Commission for Infrastructure, or the ICI. And the president, he went far beyond just a vague reassurance. He stated explicitly that he knew many of those named would have their cases finished before Christmas.
And he didn't just say they'd be charged. He made the commitment about custody, delivering that, quote, the one that instantly became the metric of success or failure for the entire administration.
They're going to be locked up. They won't have a Merry Christmas.
Just incredibly direct language.
Think about the weight of that statement, especially in the context of Philippine legal procedure. That is a bold, an almost audacious statement in any anti-corruption fight, particularly one involving senior political figures.
It implies a certainty that's just not there in legal cases.
Well, it implies that the judicial process, which traditionally takes months or even years just to move from a referral to a warrant being issued, was somehow going to achieve finality custody, essentially in just over 6 weeks. This raised the political stakes exponentially. It guaranteed that failure to meet the deadline would be a massive public relations disaster.
And What the sources confirm, sadly for the administration, is that the outcome was exactly that. After months of intensive investigation, including parallel hearings in the Senate and the House and all the work of the ICI, December 25th arrived. And no high-level official, no sitting or former congressman or senator had been jailed. The deadline was fundamentally missed.
And this is where the political reality just comes crashing down. The moment that clock ran out, it confirmed the worst fears of the public and, frankly, provided immense political fodder for the opposition. The idea that the truly powerful are indeed protected, that they're untouchable.
What's fascinating here is the speed and the coordination of the political reaction to this, the Makabayan bloc. And for our listeners who might not be completely familiar, they represent the progressive left-wing opposition coalition in Congress. They released their response specifically on Christmas
To
Day.
maximize the impact.
Absolutely, maximizing the political and symbolic impact.
They moved fast. Their statement, spearheaded by representatives like ACT Teachers Rep Tinio, Gabriela Repalago, and Capitan Rep Co., it confirmed what the public already knew. The deadline had passed without a single big fish apprehended. Their criticism was immediate, and it was incredibly cutting.
They didn't just point out the missed deadline, though, did they? They attacked the intent behind the promise itself.
Absolutely. They bypassed a simple critique and went straight for the jugular. They called the president's action empty rhetoric and propaganda. The accusation was that the promise was designed merely to pacify public outrage over massive corruption, not to genuinely dismantle it.
So a diversion tactic, essentially.
That's what they argued, that by setting a deadline they couldn't possibly meet, the administration effectively turned the fight against corruption into a political distraction.
And their summary of the situation takes that disappointment and turns it into this highly memorable and I think highly strategic accusation.
The biggest Christmas scam.
Exactly.
That language is a political masterstroke. To accuse the administration of perpetrating the biggest Christmas scam, it implies intent. It implies deception. It transforms the failure from a procedural oversight or, a simple judicial delay into a deliberate political cover-up. A scheme designed to protect the powerful and well-connected.
And the timing, of course, just drives it home.
The timing ensures maximum media visibility. It frames the administration as denying the Filipino public justice during the most sacred holiday of the year.
Which sets the stage for the second layer of criticism, which goes beyond just the missed deadline. It starts to question the fundamental targets of the investigation itself. Were they even going after the right people to begin with? So let's delve into those specific concerns. The ones raised by the critics, the Makabayan bloc, and especially Kamangagawa Rep. Eli San Fernando, because they argue that the investigation was just focusing on the lowest rungs of the ladder while, ignoring the true architects of this multi-billion-peso scheme.
Rep. San Fernando's statement really encapsulates that public frustration about the pace of the whole thing. He lamented that since the exposure of these ghost and anomalous flood control projects, which, as you mentioned, has been ongoing for months, the public had heard only press releases, but seen no results.
Which suggests a really profound skepticism about the government's operational seriousness. They're accusing officials of trying to look good on camera, acting brave and unafraid of sacred cows. But when it came down to actual warrants against the truly influential, that bravery just disappeared.
It speaks to the perception that political theater was being prioritized over diligent police and prosecutorial work. And the core critique, once again, it comes back to the definition of big fish. The opposition argues that it is just not sufficient to hold only lower-level officials and contractors accountable.
Right, it's not enough.
If you only secure the arrests of, say, field engineers, small-time budget officers, and minor construction company employees, you haven't dismantled the corrupt network, you've just trimmed the weeds.
And this is where that demand for high-level political accountability becomes explicit. It becomes unavoidable. They are pushing for the investigation to reach the highest offices that allocated and oversaw the funds in the first place.
San Fernando's quote here is absolutely central to this entire political debate. He stated that if the president was serious, quote, "Congressmen and senators involved in these projects should be arrested too." The inherent worry, which became the central theme of their criticism, is that the powerful brains and the godfathers are safe.
The brains and godfathers, that's a very clear and important distinction they're making. They're drawing a line between the people who physically carried out the corruption, the ones signing the fake documents, and the people who legislated the funds, who directed the scheme politically, and who provided the necessary protection for the whole operation to function at a multi-billion peso scale.
I mean, it is a logical argument. A scheme of this magnitude cannot operate for long without high-level political protection and facilitation. So therefore, the failure to secure the custody of these elected officials, the people who satisfy that public definition of big fish, it directly fuels the perception that the administration is either unwilling or just unable to pursue accountability at the very top.
And on top of that, Rep. San Fernando raised another highly pointed charge. It targeted procedural failings, what he termed the incompetence charge.
Yes, this is a critique aimed squarely at operational deficiencies. He lamented the fact that during the months the investigations were running, key people, potential major witnesses, or even defendants had either died or had successfully left the country. He explicitly asked, what would you call that? Well, incompetence.
That's a serious accusation, because if high-value targets are allowed to just slip away, either through a lack of travel bans or sheer investigative slowness, it fundamentally undermines the success of any eventual prosecution.
It does. It suggests that even if the administration had good intentions, the execution was fatally flawed.
This raises a really important question for you, the listener, especially in understanding this conflict. What is the public definition of a big fish versus the legal definition?
That's the crux of it, isn't it?
Yeah, because the political promise focused on the level of authority arresting a sitting senator. But the legal reality demands ironclad, specific evidence of direct criminal involvement in tangible actions like graft or malversation.
And proving that Senator X directly pocketed money rather than just facilitating the environment for others to pocket money is a much, much higher evidentiary bar. The political timeline and the legal reality, they simply do not align.
And that's the pivot point. The administration couldn't just stand there and absorb the biggest Christmas scam headline. They had to transition immediately. They had to move from defending a missed deadline to justifying the legal progress they had actually made. Which brings us directly to the palace's response and their strategic use of the rule of law. So, transitioning now to the official defense. This was provided by Palace Press Officer Claire Castro. Instead of apologizing for the failed Christmas deadline, the palace launched a rhetorical counteroffensive. They appealed directly to the Filipino public for patience and, crucially, refocused the entire narrative onto procedural integrity.
This is a classic, and I would say necessary, defense. Castro strongly emphasized the rule of law. She assured the public that the government is on the right track and is actively running after those involved, but, and this is the key, she stressed the fundamental constraint of any democracy. They must follow the rule of law and respect constitutional rights.
So the message is pretty clear.
Yes. You cannot bypass due process just because the public or the opposition demands quick, politically satisfying arrests.
The argument shifts from, we will deliver high-profile arrest by Christmas, to something more like, we must build ironclad cases that will actually stand up in court.
Precisely. The goal changes from a political victory to legal durability. However, simply appealing for patience isn't enough to combat accusations of empty rhetoric.
Right, they needed to show something tangible.
They needed to detail specific, concrete gains to prove that this wasn't just stalling. Castro defended the administration by arguing that necessary actions were taken in just 4 months, which, she argues, is a very rapid time frame for a complex, multi-agency, nationwide corruption probe involving high-level figures.
Okay, so let's break down those concrete actions they cited. What were the 4 major points they used to prove genuine operational progress?
These points are crucial because they show the investigation was achieving milestones in the legal and financial realms. It was moving beyond simple hearings and press releases and directly answering that opposition charge of incompetence.
The first one is a major move in any white-collar crime investigation: the freezing of assets.
Indeed. Castro noted that the assets of suspected individuals have been successfully frozen. This is a monumental step. It happens upon formal petitions filed by the Anti-Money Laundering Council, the AMLC. And for the AMLC to successfully freeze assets, they have to meet a threshold of evidence demonstrating a probable link between those assets and the illicit activities of the flood control scam.
So it's not just a guess. There's real evidence behind it.
Exactly. This action essentially immobilizes the suspect's wealth and prevents them from liquidating or hiding it while they await trial. It confirms that the financial trail is being followed diligently.
That's a measurable victory. Because if the money is gone, even a conviction can feel empty. The second point addresses that directly.
No.
The actual recovery of funds.
Right. The palace cited that millions of pesos worth of kickbacks have been successfully recovered by the government. This is perhaps the most tangible measure of success they possess. It directly addresses the damage done by corruption by taking back stolen money. This is often far more difficult and time-consuming than merely securing an initial arrest.
So it shifts the whole definition of success.
It does, from who is jailed to how much was recovered.
Which directly contrasts with the opposition's charge that they had only seen press releases. This is financial restitution.
Exactly. The third action they cited was the issuance of warrants of arrest. This confirms that sufficient probable cause was found by the Office of the Ombudsman and then ratified by the relevant courts to justify charging and detaining the individuals named. It's the official legal green light, a necessary precursor to the actual arrests.
And finally, actual arrests, despite the political figures remaining free and the suspects attempting to flee.
Right. The palace acknowledged the difficulty but maintained that several arrests had been made, even while some high-profile suspects went into hiding. This is important because it attempts to preempt that incompetence charge from the opposition about people fleeing the country. It shows operational success in placing some individuals in custody, even if the primary political targets remain at large.
But maybe the most strategic element of the palace defense, and something we have to spend some time on, was the comparison strategy. They didn't just defend themselves. They immediately pivoted to attack the track record of the previous Duterte administration.
This is crucial political context and, masterful framing. By strategically comparing its efforts to the Duterte administration's anti-corruption track record, the Marcos administration tried to paint its current progress as superior and more effective.
So what was the specific claim they made to create that contrast?
The specific claim was that the previous government did not act to make corrupt officials accountable, and they claimed, quote, not even a single cent of illegally obtained money was recovered during that time.
Wow, that is a very direct shot.
It's designed to draw a sharp line in the sand. By highlighting the recovery of millions of pesos in kickbacks, a tangible, measurable result, the current administration attempts to define success not by the symbolic arrest of a big fish by Christmas, but by the practical recovery of stolen funds, an area where they claim their predecessor failed entirely.
So the tactical pivot is complete. The message is, we may be slow in getting the elected officials into handcuffs by a specific date, but we are recovering money, we're freezing assets, and we're following a methodical legal process. And their argument is that this is ultimately more effective and sustainable than the high-rhetoric approach of the past. The question remains, though, who specifically are they prosecuting, and what exactly are they charging them with? We need to move from the political defense to the case files themselves. Let's shift our focus now from the political theater to the specific legal files. This is where we see the actual mechanics of the government's efforts, who has been cornered, what legal tools are being used, and why this is a much more complex picture than simply did they meet the deadline or not.
We rely heavily here on the work of the Independent Commission for Infrastructure, the ICI, which was specifically tasked with reviewing these anomalous projects. The ICI's initial function was to review engineering and financial documents and determine who should be referred for criminal investigation. And their first batch of case referrals to the Office of the Ombudsman implicated a total of 37 individuals. That's the initial universe of suspects that led to the president's promise.
And that list, as we noted earlier, it included the kind of high-profile names that absolutely satisfied that public definition of a big fish. Who were the major political and oversight figures named?
Well, the source confirms a list including sitting senators Joel Villanueva and Jinggoy Estrada. You also had Resign Ako Bicol Rep Zaldico, which is significant because he was a former House Appropriations Chair.
Meaning he was deeply involved in controlling the purse strings for these projects.
Deeply involved. Additionally, former Caloocan Rep Mitch Kayanoy was named, and notably, the Commission on Audit Chief Mario Lapana.
The inclusion of a sitting COA chief is particularly shocking. The COA's job is explicitly to oversee and prevent this kind of graft. If the person in charge of oversight is implicated, it speaks volumes about how deep and systemic the corruption truly is.
It demonstrates a total breakdown of internal checks and balances. These are individuals operating at the highest levels of government oversight, legislation, and finance. They are, by any measure, the big fish. However, when we looked at the custody status as of the December 25th deadline, we see the difficulty in prosecuting them. While 37 were implicated, the source notes that only 23 individuals implicated in the scandal were detained.
And we have to clarify the status of those 23. Our sources make a crucial distinction here. They were detained either pending trial or held in Senate custody for contempt. Those are two very different legal situations, right?
They are worlds apart. Being detained pending trial means a court has found probable cause for the criminal charge graft or malversation, and the individual is locked up because the charge is non-bailable. Being held in Senate custody for contempt simply means they refuse to testify or cooperate during the legislative investigation.
It's a procedural issue, not a criminal one.
Exactly. So the opposition's core criticism that no elected official was jailed by the deadline implies the absence of the former, the custody pending trial, for the most high-profile names.
Okay, let's do a deep dive now into the 4 separate criminal cases filed by the government to see the specific legal charges. This is where the real power lies. We'll start with the highest profile case, the one involving former appropriations chair, Zeldico.
Case example 1 revolves around a massive P289.5 million road dike project in Naujan, Oriental Mindoro. It was found to be substandard, meaning the money was spent, but the quality of the work was insufficient or defective. This is the case where the government charged more than 20 people, including Zeldico.
What were the specific criminal charges leveled against them? And why do the legal terms matter so much here?
They were charged with 2 counts of violation of the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, often just called the Anti-Graft Law, and 1 count of malversation. And for the listener, we need to clarify this distinction. Graft generally involves the illicit exchange of influence or favor. For example, a public official giving an unjustified contract to a company in exchange for a kickback.
Okay.
Malversation, under the revised penal code, is the outright misappropriation or theft of public funds by the official who has custody of those funds. Malversation carries a heavier penalty, particularly when high amounts are involved.
So the malversation charge is the real game changer here because of the funds involved.
Absolutely. The significance of malversation in this context is paramount because of the money threshold. Co is co-accused in this malversation charge because the amount of government funds involved in the Naujan project exceeded the P8.8 million threshold. And this specific figure is critical because when malversation involves funds above that amount, it becomes a non-bailable offense.
Non-bailable means what for the listener? What does that practically mean?
It means if the court finds that the evidence of guilt is strong, and the ombudsman would have presented this initial evidence, the individual is locked up immediately while they wait for trial. They cannot post bail and walk free. This is the strongest legal tool the government has against powerful white-collar criminals. It ensures that their wealth cannot buy them temporary freedom.
So the mere filing of that charge is a huge step.
The mere filing of a non-bailable malversation charge against Co represents a profound legal victory, even if they haven't physically caught him yet.
And speaking of Co, what is his current status?
Because of these non-bailable charges, Co has been declared a fugitive for refusing to return home to face them. His company, SunWest Inc., was the one that won the substandard project. The fact that a former high-ranking lawmaker is now a fugitive, having fled the country to avoid a non-bailable charge, that speaks volumes about the level of threat the government's legal actions pose to these figures.
Now let's look at the second case, which highlights a different and maybe even more blatant type of flood control anomaly.
Case example 2 is the P96.5 million non-existent flood control project in Davao del Norte. This is far more egregious than the Naujan case, which was substandard. In Davao del Norte, millions were spent on a project that simply didn't exist on the ground.
Just phantom expenditures.
Pure, outright theft.
And who are the key individuals charged in this second project?
This case charges the billionaire contractor Cesara Serra-Descaya, officers of her company, St. Timothy Construction Corps, and several Bulacan Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH, engineers. The focus here is really on the private contractors who facilitated the theft. Descaya's company being linked to a project that was purely phantom, it just underscores the systemic nature of the corruption. It wasn't just poor work, it was deliberate fraud orchestrated between public officials and private sector entities.
So to contextualize the current status of arrests once more, let's go back to the most recent information available at the time the deadline passed.
That came from DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon on December 18th, just before Christmas. He specifically updated the public that only 9, and this excludes the fugitive co of the 16 individuals accused in that Nojin case, are actually in custody. And this detail, it reinforces the critics' point that while the charges are filed and are severe, securing the actual suspects, particularly the powerful, well-resourced ones, remains a significant operational challenge for the administration.
So if we step back, on one hand, the government has successfully filed non-bailable malversation charges against high-value contractors and former political figures. They've traced illicit funds via the AMLC, and they've frozen assets. But on the other hand, the key elected officials the opposition demanded to see jailed remain free, and the headline-grabbing Christmas promise was fundamentally missed.
It is a profound study in contrasts. Technical, legal, and operational success versus political and rhetorical failure. The administration completed the legal groundwork that often takes many months or even years, but they failed the quick, politically symbolic test of the Christmas deadline.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner? We've reached the core conflict of this deep dive, the profound tension between political promises of rapid, high-level arrests and the slow, evidence-driven process of legal accountability. The political failure to meet that Christmas vow undeniably created a massive negative headline and fueled the opposition's charge of empty rhetoric.
That political failure did indeed overshadow significant operational progress. The source material, when you analyze it closely, details necessary foundational progress that rarely makes the front page. The fact that the AMLC successfully petitioned to freeze assets and the government recovered millions of pesos in kickbacks, those are tangible steps that fundamentally attack the financial foundation of the scheme.
You can measure those actions in pesos, not just in political points.
Exactly. And the government is using the most effective legal tools at its disposal, charging non-bailable malversation for projects exceeding that P8.8 million threshold. That is the strongest possible signal that they are serious about eventual long-term prosecution and custody.
It's a long game.
It is. The failure to arrest Senator X or Congressman Y by December 25th is a temporary political setback. But the successful filing of a non-bailable malversation charge against a high-value contractor or official is a long-term legal landmark. The political noise is deafening, but the legal mechanism, slow as it is grinding forward toward accountability.
This leaves us with a final thought for you, something to mull over as we close this deep dive into the fight against corruption.
The real lasting measure of success in fighting systemic corruption might not be who is jailed by a specific political deadline. It might be whether the government can successfully prosecute and win these high-value, non-bailable malversation cases against the individuals and contractors already named in the ICI referrals. If they secure convictions in these cases, if the courts confirm that stealing funds above that P8.8 million threshold means mandatory time behind bars, regardless of the defendant's political connections, that sets a true, powerful legal precedent for the future. And that precedent, which validates the rule of law over political expediency, is arguably far more important than the temporary optics of a Christmas Day arrest.